every, everyone for joining this Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today's class will be given by His Grace
Mataji,
Gopal
we are still waiting for Prabhuji.
Yes,
Just 2
I
minutes.
will. Yes, ma'am. Today's Srimad Bhagavatam class was 4.24.42 onwards will be given by His Grace Gopal Hari Prabhuji. And I would hand over the call to...
Okay.
I hand over the call to Padmasaki Mataji. Mataji, you can give a short introduction about Prabhuji Mataji. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, you joined the call.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for giving your valuable association and your time for this Bhakti Sangha conference call. We are really fortunate to hear from you, Prabhuji, and we request you 2 minutes, and I hand over the call to Padmasaki Mataji to give a short introduction about Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Mataji. You can take over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhargavi Mataji. Hare Krishna, everyone. I feel extremely happy to get a chance to introduce His Grace Gopal Hari Prabhu. So, Rupa Goswami's Yukta Vairagya principle optimized. Krishna consciousness is so encompassing that it has devotees from all walks of life. Devotees follow the Rupa Goswami's principle of Yukta Vairagya. They have the art of dovetailing all their skills for Krishna consciousness. This is exactly what our speaker for today has been doing and continues to do. He connects his knowledge on Eastern religious philosophies to Krishna consciousness and is able to prove how our Vedic philosophy is one of the richest, most practical way of going back to Godhead. Gopal Hari Prabhu is an associate professor at the University of Evansville, where he teaches courses that explore the world's living religions, Eastern religious philosophies, and the intersection between religion and science. His book, Human Suffering and Divine Play, Maya in the Bhagavad Purana, is forthcoming from Oxford University Press. He also serves as the editor for the Journal of Hindu-Christian Studies. Gopal Hari Prabhu completed his DPhil in Hindu Studies and MSc in Science and Religion from the University of Oxford, UK. Gopal Hari Prabhu is disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and he is the younger son of Her Grace Arudha Mataji. He and his family live near Indianapolis, where they have played a pivotal role in the opening of an ISKCON temple. He serves as a member of the Shastrik Advisory Council and the president of the ISKCON community in Indianapolis. As Bhargavi Mataji was mentioned, this introduction is very short. There is a lot to say about Prabhuji. I have been very fortunate, our family has been very fortunate to personally associate with him and his family. Prabhuji does very good kirtan and bhajans also. So, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for accepting to give a class today in this call. And I hand over the call to you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Actually, we have been very fortunate to have the association of Padmasaki Mataji and Nayana Viram Prabhu in Fort Myers, Florida, where I lived for 2 years. So that's my good fortune. And today I'm very fortunate to have the association of all the devotees here on the call, many of whom are more senior than me. And so I would request for all the devotees' blessings and mercy so that today we can discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and share our realizations. So the format, should I read the verse line by line and then people repeat, or should I just read the verse once through?
Just read the verse once through.
So today we'll begin our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Before we start reading Srimad Bhagavatam, it's always very nice to chant one prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I understand that today we are on Canto 4, Chapter 24, entitled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva, Text 42. Is this correct? Nothing.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So I'll read the verse. Namasta Ashishamisha Manave Karanatmane Namo Dharmaya Brihate Krishnaya Kunthamedase Purushaya Puranaya Sankhya Yogeshwaraya Cha Namasta Ashishamisha Manave Karanatmane Namo Dharmaya Brihate Krishnaya Kunthamedase Purushaya Puranaya Sankhya Yogeshwaraya Cha. So, can everyone hear me and see me clearly?
Yes,
Okay. Word for word. Namaha, offering obeisances. Te, unto you. Ashishamisha, O topmost of all bestowers of benediction. Manave, unto the supreme mind or supreme Manu. Karana Atmane, the supreme cause of all causes. Namaha, offering obeisances. Dharmaya, unto one who knows the best of all religion. Brihate, the greatest. Krishnaya, unto Krishna. Akunthamedase, unto one whose brain activity is never checked. Purushaya, the supreme person. Puranaya, the oldest of the old. Sankhya Yoga Ishvaraya, the master of the principles of Sankhya Yoga. Cha, and. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. My dear Lord, you are the topmost of all bestowers, of all benediction, the oldest and supreme enjoyer among all enjoyers. You are the master of all the worlds, metaphysical philosophy, for you are the supreme cause of all causes, Lord Krishna. You are the greatest of all religious principles, the supreme mind, and you have a brain which is never checked by any condition. Therefore, I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you. I'll read it one more time. My dear Lord, you are the topmost of all bestowers, of all benediction, the oldest and supreme enjoyer amongst all enjoyers. You are the master of all the worlds, metaphysical philosophy, for you are the supreme cause of all causes, Lord Krishna. You are the greatest of all religious principles, the supreme mind, and you have a brain which is never checked by any condition. Therefore, I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you. The word Krishnaya Akuntha purport. The word Krishnaya Akuntha Medase are significant in this verse. Modern scientists have stopped their brain work by discovering the theory of uncertainty. But factually, for a living being, there cannot be any brain activity which is not checked by time and space limitations. A living entity is called Anu, an atomic principle of the Supreme Soul, and therefore his brain is also atomic. It cannot accommodate unlimited knowledge. This does not mean, however, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has a limited brain. What Krishna says and does is not limited by space and time. In Bhagavad Gita 7:26, the Lord says, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani Mam tu Veda na Kaschana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities. But me, no one knows. Krishna knows everything, but one cannot know Krishna without being favored by him. Thus, for Krishna and his representative, there is no question of a theory of uncertainty. What Krishna says is all perfect and certain, and is applicable to the past, present, and future. Nor is there any uncertainty for one who knows exactly what Krishna says. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on Bhagavad Gita as it is, as spoken by Lord Krishna, and for those who are engaged in this movement. There is no question of uncertainty. Lord Krishna is also addressed here as Ashisham Isha. The great saintly personalities, sages and demigods are able to offer benedictions to ordinary living entities, but they in turn are benedicted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without being benedicted by Krishna, one cannot offer benediction to anyone else. The word Manave, meaning unto the Supreme Manu, is also significant. The Supreme Manu in Vedic literature is Swayambhuva Manu, who is an incarnation of Krishna. All the Manus are empowered incarnations of Krishna. Manvantara Avatar. There are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma, 420 in 1 month, 5,040 in 1 year, and 504,000 Manus in the lifetime of Brahma. Since all the Manus are directors of human society, ultimately Krishna is the supreme director of human society. In another sense, the word Manave indicates the perfection of all kinds of mantras. The mantra delivers the conditioned soul from his bondage. So simply by chanting the mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, one can gain deliverance from any condition. Karanatmane, everything has a cause. The theory of chance is repudiated in this verse. Because everything has its cause, there is no question of chance. Because so-called philosophers and scientists are unable to find the real cause, they foolishly say that everything happens by chance. In Brahma Samhita, Krishna is described as the cause of all causes. Therefore, he is addressed herein as Karanatmane. His very personality is the original cause of everything, the root of everything, and the seed of everything. As described in the Vedanta Sutra 112, Janmadhyasya Yataha, the absolute truth is the supreme cause of all emanations. The word Sankhya Yogeshwaraya is also significant herein, for Krishna is described in Bhagavad Gita as Yogeshwara, the master of all mystic powers. Without possessing inconceivable mystic powers, one cannot be accepted as God. In this age of Kali, those who have a little fragmental portion of mystic power claim to be God, but such pseudo-gods can only be accepted as fools. For only Krishna is the supreme person who possesses all mystic and yogic perfections. The Sankhya Yoga system, popular at the present moment, was propounded by the atheistic Kapila, but the original Sankhya Yoga system was propounded by an incarnation of Krishna, also named Kapila, the son of Devahuti. Similarly, Dattatreya, another incarnation of Krishna, also explained the Sankhya Yoga system. Thus, Krishna is the origin of all Sankhya Yoga systems and mystic yoga powers. The words Purusha Puranaya are also worthy of special attention. In Brahma Samhita, Krishna is accepted as the Adi Purusha, the original person, or the original enjoyer. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is also accepted as Purana Purusha, the oldest person. Although he is the oldest of all personalities, he is also the youngest of all, or Nava-yovana. Another significant word is dharmaya. Since Krishna is the original propounder of all kinds of religious principles, it is said, dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. No one can introduce a new type of religion, for religion is already there, having been established by Lord Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna informs us of the original dharma and asks us to give up all kinds of religious principles. The real dharma is surrender unto him. In the Mahabharata it is also said, Ye cha veda vido vipra, ye cha adhyatma vido jana, te vadanti mahatmanam, krishnam dharmam sanatanam. The purport is that one who has studied the Vedas perfectly, who is a perfect Vipra or knower of the Vedas, who knows what spiritual life actually is, speaks about Krishna, the Supreme Person, as one's Sanatan Dharma. Lord Shiva therefore teaches us the principles of Sanatan Dharma. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shilakaya Chakshururmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Panchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. So happy Gaur Purnima to everyone. Today is the day after Gaur Purnima, and I'm sure many of you had a very wonderful festival last night. We also had a very nice festival here, and it was a very blissful, wonderful day. I guess depending on which time zone you're in, your Gaur Purnima is just starting or your Gaur Purnima is just ending. So either way, happy Gaur Purnima to all of you. So this verse is very wonderful, and hopefully we can also connect it to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because all of us, I think, are still in the Gaur Purnima mood. So we should also discuss a little bit about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I'll just read the translation one more time as a short review, because this purport was very long, and in this purport, Srila Prabhupada covers many different types of points. It's a very, you could say, very intricate purport, where Srila Prabhupada covers so many points, and partly because the translation covers so many points, as it describes the various qualities of Lord Krishna. Once again, my dear Lord, you are the topmost of all bestowers of all benediction, the original, the oldest, and supreme enjoyer amongst all enjoyers. You are the master of all the world's metaphysical philosophy, for you are the supreme cause of all causes. Lord Krishna, you are the greatest of all religious principles, the supreme mind, and you have a brain which is never checked by any condition. Therefore, I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you. So here in this verse, a few points are mentioned over and over again. And one of them is that Krishna is the cause of all causes. This is a phrase that Srila Prabhupada used very often, the cause of all causes. And here specifically, in regards to this, Prabhupada refers to the Brahma Samhita verse, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam, Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. So this phrase, the cause of all causes, which comes from the most ancient Vedic scriptures, is a phrase that is repeated again and again throughout the ages. And Prabhupada here also refers to science and modern philosophers on many occasions in this purport. So we see that even in the recent history, in the recent past of this world, there are some very famous philosophers like Thomas Aquinas in the Christian tradition, who argued for the existence of God based upon this principle of the cause of all causes. Thomas Aquinas is a very famous Christian saint and philosopher. He lived in the 12th century. He was one of the original saints of the Catholic tradition. And even to this day, he is worshipped by the Catholics as their primary saint. He's, they spend their entire life studying his works. He's one of the great authorities in the Christian tradition. And he posed what is known as 5 lines of argument for the existence of God. He gave 5 proofs, so to say, 5 arguments for the existence of God. And these are just logical arguments, rational arguments for the existence of God. And they are of different types. Like, for example, the first one that he argues is that God must exist because God is the unmoved mover. So he points out that in this world, everything is moving, or many things are moving, and the world is moving. And so if something is moving, then there should be something that moved the thing that is moving. So if my pencil is moving in my hand, then my hand is moving the pencil, and my wrist is moving my hand, and my arm is moving my wrist, and my shoulder is moving my arm, and my body is moving my shoulder. And ultimately we know that the soul is moving the body. But then what is moving the soul? Well, there's oxygen on this planet. The oxygen causes, the stomach to move and gives it energy. Then the atmosphere is there. The earth planet is there because I'm situated in a place, therefore I can push something because I have a place to stand. So the world is moving me. And then we ask, well, what makes the world move? And then you say, well, the world moves because it's been moving since a long time. And then if the world is moving, then what is causing the world to move? Well, something is causing the world to move, and that is the original mover. Something is causing it to move. And so Thomas Aquinas says that whatever is the first cause of the movement, whatever is causing everything else to move, whatever that is, you may call it the Big Bang, you may call it chance, you may call it nature, that unmoved mover is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, God. Right? So that is by definition who God is. So this was one of his lines of argument. Another one was this one, which we are reading today in the Bhagavatam, the cause of all causes. That he says God is that original cause that has no other cause, but that causes everything else in this world. He is the cause of all causes. So with the same logic, I have a cause, that is my parents. My parents have their cause, that is my grandparents. They have their cause, they have their cause. So if we keep going back and back and back, and we find an original cause, then that unmoved mover, the cause of all causes, that is the original cause which has no cause, that is Krishna. That is the Supreme Personality of God. Aquinas says you can call it anything you want. You can say, you can call it the laws of gravity, you can call it whatever you want to identify it by name, you can identify it. But whatever it is, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about God, the cause of all causes. So, here Srila Prabhupada is also speaking about modern science. And he begins this verse, his purport, by saying, Krishnaya Akuntha Medase are significant in this verse. That there is no end to the brain of Krishna, to the mind of Krishna. But for modern scientists, they have had to stop their brain work. Why? Because Prabhupada refers to this a few times in the purport, they have had to take refuge of the theory of uncertainty. When they cannot figure something out, then they say, it is uncertain. It is the theory of uncertainty. This is, Prabhupada says, this is their testament to their ignorance. When someone cannot figure something out, you ask them a question, they say, it is uncertain. It is uncertain. There's no answer to it. When in fact, they just don't know the answer. So modern scientists, they are simply resorting to the principle of uncertainty. Why? Because their mind, their brain is so limited. When they cannot find an answer, they say, it happened by chance. It is uncertain. It is random. There is no cause for this. Why? Because they have not appreciated that their mind is so small, but the mind of the Supreme Person, the brain of the Supreme Person is so great. In this regard, it's very interesting that there were the original scientists, you could say, of the Western world. Science began in Western Europe with a group of not scientists, but these were actually theologians. These were people who believed in God and were very devoted to God. This was in about the 15th, 16th century. And science began with this group of people who wanted to study nature. And why did they want to study nature? Because they were deeply religious, but they wanted to find a way to argue for the existence of God, to try to re-establish people's faith in God. At that time, people had started to lose faith in the church. There's some problem in the administration, in the leadership, and they had sort of lost their faith in the church. And so people were, not going to the churches, and they were just staying at home. So they thought, how can we bring people's faith back in God? So they said, well, let's study nature. And by studying nature, we can find, patterns in nature, find arguments for the existence of God, to show that there is a design in nature, and therefore there is a designer. So one of the people in this group, or you could say the champion of this group, was none other than Isaac Newton. Newton is so famous in modern science. He discovered the laws of physics, 3 basic laws of physics. He wrote a book called the Principia Mathematica, which is the foundation of modern mathematics, trigonometry, algebra, calculus. His book, Principia Mathematica, is considered to be the most influential book in all of science, the basis of all of science. He had a very major hand in optics and thermodynamics. He made the first working model of the solar system. So in all of these ways, he was like one of the founding fathers of modern science. But what is very interesting about his life is that Newton, for most of his life, did not do science. Most of the science that he did only in the span of 5 years as an undergraduate student at Cambridge University. And by the time he graduated, he had written most of his scientific works, and his professor was so impressed by him, he said that, while you are alive, Newton, my chair, that is the chair of physics at Cambridge University, cannot belong to anyone else. So therefore, I'm giving up my chair and giving it to you. So Newton took up the chair in physics at Cambridge University. And after that, for the rest of his life, And for the earlier part of his life, before he was a student, he simply wrote books on God and religion and Jesus Christ. He wrote over 1 million words on God and spirituality. 10 times the amount that he wrote in science. So for most of his life and most of his works, it focused on God and religion. So historians of science used to ask the question that why did Newton, the scientist, study religion? But now, after they know more about his life, they ask the question, why did Newton, the theologian, study science? Right? Why did he study science if he was primarily interested in religion? He was born in the family of a priest. He was searching God for the whole duration of his life. He wrote books and books and volumes on the nature and qualities of God. So why did he study science? Well, the answer to this question is found in Newton's own writings. And in the introduction to his Principia Mathematica, Newton gives the answer as to why he wrote his book on mathematics. In that introduction, he writes that nothing could please me more than the fact that this, the Principia Mathematica, could strengthen belief in God. He said, nothing can please me more than if by reading this book, the Principia Mathematica, faith in God is strengthened. So one might ask the question, why did Newton feel that by writing a book on mathematics, faith in God is strengthened? Well, Newton was thinking along these lines, that if I can show that in this world, actually there are mathematical laws, that actually this entire nature and this universe is being run and determined and is moving about by very precise mathematical laws, such that you can predict, scientists today can predict exactly what time the sun will rise 20 years from now, exactly what time the moon will rise 23 years from now. Because nature is so precise, it is so mathematical. Then, in fact, people would see that things don't happen by chance. Nothing happens by chance. It's not that one day, the sun rises at 2 in the morning. Another day it rises at, 5 in the evening. Another day it rises at 6 in the morning. But in fact, the universe runs by very specific laws. And if I can show that there's laws in this world, therefore he wrote the laws of physics, and things follow very strict laws in this world, then people will say, if there's laws in this world, then there must be a lawmaker. There must be a lawmaker. If there's laws, then there must be a lawmaker. So he was a natural theologian, meaning through nature, he was arguing for the existence of God. And by showing that there's laws in this world, that there's mathematical patterns that govern nature, he is showing that the universe is predictable, the universe has design, the universe has laws, and therefore there should be a designer and intelligence behind this world. So this was the project, this was the purpose for which this study started. This is why science began, otherwise it would not have begun. It began as a way to argue for the existence of God. Nowadays people say that, science and atheism go together, or science and religion are in conflict. But if you look at the history of science and religion, this is completely the opposite. Science actually came out, took birth from religion, to understand the creation of God. And it took birth out of religion, so much so that Newton specifically wrote, he said that his study of nature was not just a study of the material elements of this world, but rather the study of nature, according to Newton, was the study of the mind of God. So Newton and the other philosophers, they saw their science and their study of science as a form of worship. It was their way of appreciating and understanding the mind of God. Newton in one place wrote, he said, God has two books. One book is the book of his words. What is that? That is the Bible, right? Or the Bhagavad Gita, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the book of his words. And the second book that God has is the book of his works. The book of his words and the book of his works. And the book of his works is nature. Nature is the handiwork of God. And therefore, what to speak of science being an atheistic phenomena, they saw science as studying the handiwork of God. Studying the handiwork of God. This is what science was for them. And it was their mode of worship. There's some paintings of that era, of that time, in that period, where you find these original scientists like Newton, Robert Boyle, all of these famous names in science who were actually theologians doing natural theology, which became known as natural philosophy. They would have two tables in their laboratory. On one side, they had their lab table with all their chemicals that they were mixing and all these things. And on the other side, they had their altar. And when things were not working on one side, that is their chemical table, they would turn over and they would go to the other side, which was their altar, and they would start praying there, praying to God for inspiration. And once they would stay there at that table for some time, they would turn back to their other table, their laboratory table, and they would start doing their lab work. They were praying to God to give them inspiration, to give them knowledge as to how to understand the mind, of God, understand His brain. Like Prabhupada, this verse is saying, the brain of God, which is infinite, unlimited. So there is so much reverence. The original scientists had so much reverence in their mind for God, so much reverence for God. And therefore, you see that the great discoveries were made by them. This is actually a problem in modern science, that no one is actually discovering anything very major in recent times. They saw this world as infinite, as incomprehensible, and they prayed to God that you please reveal your mind to us so that we can understand your amazing creation. This was the feeling, this was the mood by which they did their work. And therefore, God, Krishna, blessed them with so much inspiration. Recently, they did a survey of who was the greatest scientist of all history. And without doubt, people said it was Isaac Newton. Newton was the greatest scientist of all time. And the people there who were along with him of his same generation. So they had inspiration, they were inspired, because they could understand, they understood that this world is not just a machine that works in a blind fashion. This world is the handiwork of God. This world is designed by an infinitely perfect and intelligent person who has made it so complex and so wonderful. So this knowledge of God being the cause of all causes, how does it help us? Right? How does it bring us closer to Krishna? Why is the Srimad Bhagavatam giving us this detailed knowledge about the Lord being the cause of all causes? Why is it that these original scientists that we see, Newton, Robert Boyle, they wanted to establish this principle? And we see that the Bhagavatam is full of narrations of technical creation. You know, the whole third canto is filled with Sankhya. The second canto is about creation, Nyaya and Vaisheshika, such detailed scientific knowledge. How does it help us on the path of devotion? Well, the reason why this is so important is that when we understand this simple principle, that nothing is uncertain in this world, nothing happens by chance, but there's actually a cause for all causes, then we can completely surrender unto the Supreme Lord. The reason why this knowledge is given there in the scriptures is not just for finding the truth. It's not just given there for theoretical knowledge. But it's given there because if we truly understand this fact, we understand this principle that everything has a cause, and there's a cause for all causes. If we truly, not just theoretically understand it, but actually realize it, that Krishna is the cause of everything in this world. There's no end to his brain. There's no limit to his mind. He's even the cause of this class that we're having today. He's the cause of this computer that I'm using today. He's the cause of this water which I'm drinking today. Then that will lead us to truly surrendering to the Supreme Personality of God. Because we don't surrender to Krishna. We don't take shelter of him because we are not convinced that actually he is the cause of everything. Therefore, we put our faith and our refuge in other things because we think that, well, Krishna is not in control. My boss is in control, or my intelligence is in control. I can figure things out. I can solve problems. I can do this. I can do that. Because we're not convinced of Krishna's supreme majesty and influence in this world, how he influences everything. Therefore, we don't take shelter of him. But the devotee knows Sutre Mani Gana Eva, that Krishna is the underlying principle in everything in this world. We have some free will. We can, exert our free will in different ways. But ultimately, it is Krishna who is the benefactor, the well-wisher, and the permitter of all of our activities. So, this knowledge of Krishna's supreme majesty leads us to surrendering to Krishna. And moreover, furthermore, not just surrendering to Krishna, but it also leads us to the platform of unalloyed devotion to Krishna. Something so basic, a philosophical principle that is so, you could say, mundane. So just the, philosophy of causes of all causes, that there's originally a cause for everything, and that is God. That leads us, that is the basis for unalloyed devotion. Otherwise, if we're not convinced about this, our devotion will be alloyed, not unalloyed. Why is this? Because when we think that there's other causes, then not only does it stop us from surrendering, but it also makes us think that the cause of my happiness is not just Krishna, so therefore I should worship someone else. I should worship a great human being in this world. I should worship a demigod. I should worship myself. I should worship my family members. I should worship my nation. So our devotion is many branched. It is divided among so many people. But when we are convinced that only Krishna is the cause, he is the source of everything, then that devotion is not disturbed. It is not diverted to anyone else. It's only fixed upon Krishna. And see, this is why Queen Kunti in her prayers, she tells this to Krishna in this beautiful verse that she says, where she says, Gange Vogham Udanvati. She says that, let my attention be only diverted to you, Krishna. Let it be fixed upon you, and it may not be diverted to anyone else. And let my attention go to you, just as the river Ganges flows to the ocean. The Ganges does not flow anywhere else, especially if you go high up in the mountains in the Himalayas. It rushes so fast that no one can bathe in the Ganga. Even if you were to throw a car into the Ganga, you would not see it for a minute. It's so powerful. It goes so fast and it's so strong. So she says, that's how I want my attraction to be for you, O Lord Krishna. That my attraction should rush to you, just like the Ganges flows to the ocean. That's the way my attraction should be. It should not be diverted to my family men, to my kinsmen, she says, to the Pandavas, to the Vrishnis. It should be only fixed on you. Because You are the only object of worship. And while all of us, every single one of us, loves Krishna so deeply, right? We are all devotees and we love Krishna so deeply. The reason why our love is not pure love, like on the level of prema bhakti, the reason why we are struggling to reach that point is because our love is not fixed. It is not tailadhara, as the acharyas say. It is not unmotivated and uninterrupted. It has some motivation. It has some interruption. We love Krishna in the morning when we chant our rounds, but we forget about him during the day. Or we love him in the evening when we're doing artik, but we forget about him in the morning. It has interruptions. It has motivations. And it is not one-pointed. Right? We have other objects of love also. Unlike the gopis of Vrindavan, who had only one object of love, Krishna. Unlike Queen Kunti, what she is praying for is that I may only have one object of affection. So this is that the practical realization that comes from knowledge about Krishna, that actually no one in this world is worthy of worship other than Krishna and Krishna's representatives, which are the devotees, those who are basically just Krishna coming to us, Krishna's mercy form. There's no other object of worship because there's no other cause for anything. And this is why, people say that, well, Krishna has so many avatars, the demigods are part of Krishna, right? Why we have so many Hindu families, they say, they're all the same. Why we should not worship Lord Shiva? Shiva, even we say, he's a form of Vishnu in touch with this material creation. Why I should not worship Shiva? I can also worship Narayan. I can also worship, Ganesh for removing obstacles. I can also worship, my grandparents who are so pious and they are, their blessings are there. But Krishna says, remove all of this. Sarva dharman parityaja, mam ekam sharanam vraja. Ekam, mam ekam sharanam vraja. Remove all of these other dharmas, though they are pious, though they are good, though they are spiritual. Throw them away. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami ma. Just surrender unto me, I will take complete care of you. Because Krishna is asking for our one-pointed attention. Forget all of this. It is just Krishna, the samam gonam, as Prabhupada said. Forget all of our mental speculation, the Prabhupada is saying. All the mental speculation, their mind is speculating non-stop of the material. And this is particularly the philosophy, the teaching, the great gift of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling us that come to the platform of unalloyed devotion. Ahaituki apratihata, ya atma suprasidati. That do not waste your time with the process of the Vedas. Though the Vedas are spoken by God, they are spiritual literature. But don't go on the process of ritualistic activity. Don't waste our time in fruitive work. I will give God $10, so hopefully He will give me $100. I will give God 2% of my salary, because this is all I can give. I will give God 1 hour out of my day. I will serve Krishna for 1 hour a week. No, 100%. 100% of my salary, 100% of my time, 100% of my energy, 100% of my resources. Everything, Krishna, is yours. My life is yours. Like the gopis of Vrindavan, He is giving that highest message of self-surrender to Krishna, unalloyed devotion, where we move beyond the practice of Sankhya. We move beyond the practice of yoga. We move beyond the practice of karma kanda. We move beyond the practice of karma yoga. And we come simply on that platform of pure devotional service, of spontaneous devotional service to Krishna. And that is the platform that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to bring us to. And therefore, he is freely distributing that love of God. The love of God, which is not for any motivation, which is not, there to fulfill our material desires and wants and needs, but that love of God which flows from the heart. In this love, we worship Krishna for no other purpose than Krishna, than loving and serving Krishna. Just like we experience in this world that sometimes there's a very rich man or rich woman, and they're very, very wealthy. And because they're so wealthy and influential and powerful and maybe beautiful and handsome, they have a very difficult time in this world finding a spouse, finding a lover. Why? Because they say that people love them not for who they are, but they love them for their money, right? They want to find someone who doesn't love them for their money, or doesn't love them for their beauty, or doesn't love them for their fame. And so therefore they're very cautious when they find someone and they get married. They'll sign a contract with them that if there's a divorce, you won't get any of my money, to make sure that that person is loving them not for their money. If I die, you won't get my money. They'll go to a trust. But they're actually loving them because they want to love them. Now Krishna, he is the most beautiful person, right? He is the most wealthy person. He's the most famous person. He's the most intelligent person. So many people are wanting to love him because he's richer than Bill Gates. He's richer than Mike Bloomberg. He's richer than, all these big billionaires. So he's richer than Trump. They are loving him because he's the most wealthy person. He's most wanted. He's the most influential person. And Krishna knows this, that so many people are coming to me because they're loving me because they have some motivation. They want something from me. But such people, they are also pious. He says in the Gita, they're pious. And he is saying that although they're pious and I appreciate them, but still their devotion is not perfect. Because they are loving me for things that I have rather than for me. And he says that no, that person who loves me, only for Krishna, not for my wealth or my influence, but loves Krishna because they want to love Krishna, they are the highest devotees. They are most dearest to me. And that devotion completely controls my heart. That devotion brings me under the control of the devotee. And therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he did not write much. He did not teach by writing books. But he wrote 8 verses, which are called the Shikshashtaka. And in the Shikshashtakam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the essence of all of his teachings. He gives the ultimate principle. He gives the ultimate message. And in the 4th verse of the Shikshashtakam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives us this very profound message. He says, Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadishaye mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhaktir haikati. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, he says that I do not worship Lord Krishna for dhanam, na dhanam, I do not worship him for wealth, na janam, I do not worship the Lord for a high parentage, an aristocratic lineage, for followers, for a nice position. Na sundarim, I do not worship the Lord for beauty, for opulence, to have a beautiful wife, a handsome husband, or in general to have opulence, a beautiful house, nice car. These things, I don't worship the Lord. Mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhaktir haiti. My Lord, I only worship you for your unalloyed devotion. Let me take birth after birth after birth in this material world, but let me be your unalloyed devotee. The devotee of the Lord does not worship the Lord even for liberation. Even if we want liberation from suffering, and we want Vaikuntha, and we are worshipping the Lord for freedom from suffering, then the Lord will not come. The Lord will not become fully manifest. We are worshipping the Lord simply to love Him. To love Him for His own sake. So we love Him only for Him, for nothing that He has, but for simply who He is. And finally, just last point, this is why we see that the Lord came when Gajendra called Him. Right? Gajendra, we know the story in the Bhagavatam, where Gajendra is a very great elephant and a great devotee of the Lord, and he's attacked by a crocodile. And when the crocodile attacks him, then Gajendra fights with the crocodile for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, he's in this miserable condition, painful condition, in which he's fighting with this crocodile. He's just fighting and fighting, and he's becoming more and more detached and frustrated within his heart. Right? And then finally he comes to the point of death. And at that moment, he picks up a lotus flower and he calls to Lord Vishnu. He calls to the Lord. He remembers his past life as king in the Dumna, and he calls out to the Lord. And we find that when he says these beautiful prayers to the Lord and prays to Him, Lord Vishnu rushes on his Garuda and he appears in front of Gajendra in a moment. And in that very moment, he cuts off the crocodile's head, and he relieves Gajendra from his pain and gives him, freedom from that terrible situation. And the question that comes is, why did the Lord appear to Gajendra? And why does He not appear when sometimes we call out to Him? We pray to Him, the Lord does not appear. And Srimad Bhagavatam tells us that the reason why He appears to Gajendra and Krishna does not appear to others often is because by the end of 1,000 years, Gajendra was so disgusted with the material world. And because he was such a great devotee of the Lord, and also in his past life he was king in the Dumna, a very great devotee of the Lord, by the end of 1,000 years, Gajendra was done with the material world. Gajendra no longer wanted to be in the material world. And therefore, actually in his prayers, Gajendra actually says this. He tells the Lord that I am not praying to you to free me from death. I am not praying to you to save me from this crocodile. But I am praying to you, why? That you may end my repetition of birth and death in this material world. He says, I am praying to you that you may finish my material existence. So when he was praying to the Lord, he was not praying to Him that, oh God, please save me so I can live longer. But he was praying to Krishna that please end my cycle of birth and death in this material world. This material conditioning that I have. And therefore, Krishna immediately came and took him back to Vaikuntha. That, you want to come back to me, so I'm here now immediately. He was praying for the end of his material life, the beginning of his spiritual life. So this is the message of unalloyed devotion that we learn from this beautiful verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. We can appreciate that the Lord is the cause of all causes, the only object of worship, and this is also the teaching of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that gradually, ultimately, we want to come to this platform of unalloyed devotion. So I'll end here. I think I went a little over time. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. You have time for questions?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you so much. I had been waiting for you to come on the conference call. You sound a lot like your brother. Thank you so much for coming and speaking so beautifully. Your presentation was so wonderful. I just had a question. This is about when you were talking about the sciences, how everything in this world is based on the theory of uncertainty. Like they're never able to pinpoint this is the cause. So wouldn't they question us, spiritualists, who speak in favor of the Lord, saying that, oh, everything is coming from the Lord is all-knowing, He's everything, but yet He's inconceivable. When we say that His energies are inconceivable, wouldn't they ask us the same question?
isn't that uncertain as well? How do we understand this? Or rather, how is it possible for us to explain this to those people?
Yes. Very nice question. Very, very nice question. Actually, just a little background. The principle of uncertainty says, and we see how Prabhupada was so learned in all fields. He is so such a genius. The principle of uncertainty is actually the best principle to illustrate this point, because the principle of uncertainty says that an atom and you could say an electron within the atom is inherently uncertain, meaning that this was sort of established by the most latest science, the most you could say confidential part of the modern physics, that an atom behaves, a particle of light behaves both like a particle and a wave. So, and the movement of the electron and the atoms is inherently uncertain. They cannot predict why they're moving in a certain way and in what direction they're moving and how they're moving about. So, at the very basis of the universe, they say that there's no rhyme or reason or logic as to why the atoms are moving in the way they are, which is a very big problem because the whole universe is made out of atoms. So everything in this universe is, uncertain. And so, so the material world, does not make sense. They say, oh, there's laws and everything is so predictable, all these things. But there's nothing that's predictable because even the atoms themselves are incomprehensible to us. So now you are mentioning that, well, Krishna is also inconceivable, right? Krishna is also incomprehensible. So how have we improved the situation? Well, we agree. We have not improved the situation at all. But the point that we are, you could say, illuminating, that the Bhagavatam is illuminating, is that the scientists, the philosophers, the atheists, the rationalists, they are not actually doing anything more. You could say they are not actually improving the situation any more than what religion has. And this is a very important point, very significant point. I'll just explain it, why this is actually a very powerful point. The scientists say that, no, see, religion is based on faith. You all are faithful and you all just believe in God and you're just, sentimentalists. But we scientists, we are simply based on reason. We have proved everything that we believe in. We don't take anything on faith. But here it's being shown, the principle of uncertainty is showing, and Prabhupada is showing, that actually the scientist is also accepting things on faith. Actually, the scientists also cannot understand anything about this universe. And when they cannot understand it, rather than saying God, they just say uncertain. Uncertainty, principle of uncertainty. Or they say chance. So both the scientist and the theologian cannot understand the mind of God, the inconceivable, wonderful, great universe. They cannot understand it. But who is better? The person who is honest or the person who is dishonest? Those who are spiritualists, right, they are at least honest. That yes, we are faithful. This is beyond our mental capacity. God, this universe, today scientists say that the universe has 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. This is what science says, not religion. There's 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. Now, how did they come up with that number? Did anyone go and count the 100 billion galaxies? And we don't even know the end of our galaxy. How do they know that each galaxy contains 100 billion stars? As far as they are concerned, it could easily contain 101 billion stars. And there could be easily 200 billion galaxies, because no one saw the end of the galaxy. These are just numbers that they throw out. And then they say, we know so much. See, there's 100 billion galaxies. Who counted them? So the scientist is simply making a fool of himself. And he's making a fool of others when he says Not all scientists, because most scientists actually believe in God. But when he says that we don't believe in faith, that we have no faith, everything is based on reason. So the devotee is simply being honest that yes, this universe is inconceivable, and the mind of God is also inconceivable.
Very well. Very nice, Prabhu. Very, very nice answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I really want you to come more often whenever you have time. Thank you so much. And anyone else has any questions, comments, realizations, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranams. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Very nice synthesis of science and religion, and you told us so many things that we didn't know about Isaac Newton. Of course, we only knew that he believed in God, but then these facts are so wonderful. So, from where do we get these facts that he was mostly a theologian, and then he wrote a lot of books on God? And my second question is, we find that in the medieval period, many scientists are believers of God.
Yeah.
But then, when did it start that science started, conflicting with religion? If you can throw some light on it. Thank you.
So, regarding Newton, your first question, these facts about Newton, you can read in any biography of Newton. So if you go to the library or you go online and you search biography of Newton, you can find many details of his life. I only mentioned a few with the interest of time, but other things are how Newton, growing up, he was such a religious person. He would write down, he had a diary, and in that diary he would write down all of his sins, which were mainly all mental. Like, I had this bad thought today, so he'd write it down. This was a very, materialistic thought. Let me write this down. So he was actually very, very deeply spiritual. And so you can read so much about his life. And his theology of God actually matched a lot with our philosophy, where he believed that Christ is the Son of God, not God, and God is the Father, who is the Father of Christ. So, very intelligent person, very spiritually enlightened person. Actually, going now to your second point, most of the scientists, basically all of them, were actually clergy. They were the people who could, read and write at that time in the Middle Ages. And so they, in the medieval period, and so they wrote books on science. And they all believed in God. Very, very few of them did not. And then later on, as Kali Yuga progressed, and before also there were many. There were always atheists, but later on, people started saying, "Well, Newton showed that there's laws, so maybe the laws themselves are God." So rather than Newton intended that if he shows that there's laws, then there should be a lawmaker. But we are so clever. Materialists are so determined not to be lovers of God that they said, well, okay, Newton said there's laws, so we'll just say that the laws themselves are God. The very source of this world is God. So Newton's strategy actually, in some ways, backfired, where rather than strengthening faith in God, for many people it reduced their faith in God. And for this very reason, our acharyas have said that our faith in God should not be based simply on reason and science and arguments for the existence of God. Our faith in God should be based on scripture. But that faith can be further strengthened by rational arguments, by reasonable arguments. So Newton also made this point very clearly in his life. He said that my faith is based upon the Bible, and these findings are there to further confirm and strengthen the teaching of the Bible. So we should not make the mistake of saying that science proves the existence of God. It does not, because you can interpret science in many different ways. Science also does not disprove the existence of God. That's also a false statement. to say that science disproves the existence of God. Science is simply a methodology to understand the world, to know about the world, and then you can interpret it in different ways. The obvious interpretation is that, look, there's a designer, it's so logical, but our faith should be based on scripture, and then we can use these arguments as further arguments for the existence of God.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. I have one more question, but if anybody else wants to ask questions, they can go ahead. And if you have time, I can ask.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanvat Pranam. It's wonderful, Prabhu, like the class which you gave, and to tell you the truth, like this Friday in the Bhakti Vriksha, we had just this discussion going on, and really? I think that was the very first time when my son spoke in the Bhakti Vriksha, and he's 14 now, so he has his own concepts, and it is so important that when preachers like you preach, then they get an understanding, because you all are so calm and you can make them explain in a right way, and I really see to it that my son listens to this class, because the Prabhu who was explaining him was also so cool and calm, and he was trying to tell. So we had a discussion about Charles Darwin in that class, and then that Prabhu also tried to give him that perspective, like how the Vedas did not, like when we had a discussion about how Vyasadeva divided all the Vedas, and that was for the betterment of the humankind, and how Charles Darwin was sent on an expedition so that he can prove everything was wrong and everything just existed out of nothing. And that class, my son, like he never had any discussions with me, but then when he came that day from that class, he said that this is the right Bhakti Vriksha which I want to go into, because at least, because when he discusses it with us, sometimes we end up into an argument as a parent, like why are you being such an why do you want to have such views? But then when preachers like you preach, it just helps them to put their views as well and make it them understand in the right way. So, and Prabhu, I just had to ask you, like, because he was talking about Charles Darwin, so then that Prabhu said that you should read his, because at the end of the discussion it was like how Charles Darwin at the end of his life he was regretting about because he was being paid and he was being funded for his things, right? So at the end of his life he was having a lot of regret for what he did. So if we have to have this new generation or the new thoughts to understand them scientifically, what would you recommend them to read, Prabhu? Like anything else like which will really clarify their mind? Because they are not totally atheists. They believe in God. They believe in everything. But just they need some more profound reasons for it.
Right. Yes. Actually, Mataji, I have a 1 week seminar on this topic of science and religion, in which we go through all of the major themes in science and religion, and like Big Bang cosmology, evolutionary theory, the history of science, like Newton, Einstein, and one of the things that comes very clear when you see the big picture, when you see it through a very broad lens, that how this whole idea that atheism, that science and atheism are the same, is just propaganda. Like, to give you an example, the professor for the public understanding of science, so meaning the professor for how the public understands science at Oxford University, is Richard Dawkins, who is a committed atheist. So the professors for the public understanding of science are committed atheists. So they give people the impression that science is equal to atheism. So you see that how that all of that is just propaganda, and how every major theory in science is establishing that is fully compatible and is encouraging belief in God. Another one that we look at is Big Bang cosmology, that how the Big Bang theory is like, Stephen Hawking says that it has clearly religious implications because of the specific ideas that are part of that cosmology. So in terms of literature, resources, there's a lot of resources out there, and that's why I can understand your son's predicament. There's a lot of resources out there which are not really solid. Like they're mainly, they say science and religion prove one another, or they're very this and that, and like just they talk about the relationship between science and religion, but there's not an honest discussion there. Either someone is very religious and they're using science to prove their to argue for religion, or someone's an atheist and they're trying to use science for that purpose. So there's some books, and you have to differentiate them from other books that are academic in nature, that are very rigorous in their logic back and forth. And so in the academic world, you find, even outside of Krishna consciousness, you find very good religious people who show, how the argument that science and religion are in conflict is a false argument, and they give very good reasons for it that we as devotees can very easily accept or use. And that we can save for a different time. But within our movement, some very nice books are by Sadaputta Prabhu. Sadaputta Prabhu, his Karmi name is, I forget. Anyway, I think all of you know him. So he's written some very good books. There's one book, he has God and Science. So in our movement, he's one person who sort of came, who wrote very nice books that were very solid in terms of their arguments. And so I refer him to that. Sometime I can also, discuss with him. There's many other devotees also in this movement who are reading and writing on this. So, the key thing is just to find books and arguments that are very rigorous in their understanding. Like, for example, our acharyas, they were also very sharp, and they said that of course they were, but the point is that they were not very happy when their disciples were trying to prove the existence of God through science or reason. Because Ramanujacharya, for example, he writes that you cannot prove the existence of God through a rational method. So they were very honest, thinkers who were not trying to make a false argument. They said, no, there's a place for everything, and ultimately, one's faith in Krishna is established when three things work simultaneously. One is revelation, that is scripture. The second is reasoning, and the third is experience. So all three have to be there. Your experience, your reason, your observation of this world, and then reason after that, and then scripture. All three, when they work together, then you can convince yourself about the existence of God. So I'll stop there. Yes.
Okay, Prabhu, and if you could share information maybe later or any time about the class which you also take, Prabhu, that would really help.
Sure, Mataji. That's actually what I was mentioning is this is not a class that I do regularly, but this is like a I have about it's a 7th series. It's a series seminar in which we go through all the major topics. And just like we talked about Newton today, people are surprised. Most people, they're very surprised to know that how compatible science is with religion. So I was just mentioning to that there's actually many topics. Darwinism is just one, but also you have Big Bang cosmology. You have what is known as the anthropic principle. You have the principle of uncertainty. The Prabhupada here speaking of that. All of these different topics are there, and they're very nice to discuss.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. And please give your association regularly. It would be really nice. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Mataji. Yes,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. I have a couple of questions, Prabhu. One is that it doesn't take too much to realize that there is so much of intelligence, behind all this creation that we see. So I'm sure you must have come across scientists, who also may agree to this or disagree to this. But what's their thought process if they're atheists? And do they believe in a superpower or something like that?
And the second question was, I mean, if I know it right, you graduated from Oxford, right? And you said the chair was an atheist. So on a very level, how was it dealing, because you know the other side of the truth too, like your, you seeped in spiritualism also, and how did it, how would you actually work on a personal basis with, your department where, when you know the truth for a fact, but still you just have to, kind of agree to what they're saying, or how did you deal with that situation, Prabhu? Maybe that can give us some strength to, as a devotee, for devotee kids, how to deal with the external environment.
Yes, that's a very nice question. It's actually, I studied religion, science and religion, but particularly also religion at Oxford University. And when I went in, I was a little scared. The reason being is because it's actually a fact that most students, when they study religion, after that, after studying religion, like doing a PhD in religion, they will come out an atheist. After studying religion, they'll lose their faith in God. And so I was thinking, will this also happen to me? Well, what will happen here? So the reason is because the same thing like Prabhupada here is saying, this mental speculation and this, material knowledge, it can cloud the mind. It can confuse the mind, so much so that we can actually lose our faith in God, lose our spirituality. So the key thing there is that our own spiritual underpinning, you could say, our spiritual realization and philosophy should be very established, very sound. And then when we encounter opposing philosophies, by the mercy of the acharyas, we can break through them. By the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we can go through them. And sometimes people lose their faith as a result of their study, but sometimes as a result of study, if we're doing it in line with the acharyas, our knowledge of God, our appreciation of God can deepen also. So the more we actually carefully read the Srimad Bhagavatam, the more we will understand just how sublime and how deep it is, how deep the knowledge is, how logical it is. And then we can see that actually all other philosophies are impressive, but nothing is as impressive as the Srimad Bhagavatam. Nothing comes to par. And this was actually my own personal realization, and I think the realization of many people in the course, through my study. This was my realization that how ultimately everything is a matter of faith. Like someone asked the question previously. Any philosophy that you accept in this world is a matter of faith. There's no philosophy that you can be 100% sure it is correct. Atheism is a matter of faith. Christianity is a matter of faith. And even Krishna consciousness is a matter of faith. So none of us can claim that we know the absolute truth unless and until we are a pure devotee and we've realized the truth. Right? Until we've actually experienced it, we cannot claim that. But among the different philosophies that are there, we can, from all of those relative, you could say, with all the options that we have, the worldviews that are present in front of us, relatively we can see that, this philosophy makes the most sense and is the most deepest. So as a result of the study, I had to go through so many different philosophies, basically the major world religions, all the major world religions, science, atheism. You have to study all of these things, and then through that, then just by the simple method of comparison, it became so obvious that there's just no philosophy that's at par with Srimad Bhagavatam, that's at par with our Vaishnava philosophy. And then you see that, well, I have 5 or 6 options. Either I can be an atheist, I can be a Christian, I can be a Muslim, I can be a Jew, I can be a devotee. And of these 5, clearly Krishna consciousness is the most logical, most satisfying, and most wonderful. And therefore, I should choose this. Therefore, I will choose this. So, especially many questions here are about the youth, about our youth. Ultimately, they have to find Krishna consciousness for themselves. They have to be convinced themselves. They will not practice it simply because their parents are practicing it. So, through this process, they can actually find it for themselves. They can see that, okay, this is actually, so the process therefore is that we have to help them deeply study Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to debate with them these different philosophies, and then they themselves will see that of all these philosophies, the one that shines forth is the most logical is this one. Because the point is that they have to understand that everything is a matter of faith in this world. Even if you don't believe in God, that's a matter of faith. If God is beyond space and time, you cannot prove that God does not exist. You can only have a faith that He does not exist. So yes, we have to study it deeply. And to answer your first part of your question, most of the scientists in the world had some realization of God. They realized Him to some degree. Like Einstein, he did not believe in a personal God. He did not adhere to a personal type of God like Newton did. He was not as spiritual. But he did clearly say on so many occasions, he said that the world is a miracle and there's something miraculous about the world. It is not just chemicals. He accepted and he pointed it out to all of his friends that there is some divine power. And he said, I don't know that power, but I submit myself to that power. So yes. Nice question. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, do you have time?
Yes, I have time. I'm in no hurry.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful answer. So, one of my friends asked this question that he was trying to talk to a friend that he met in the airport about Bhagavad Gita and other things. He is from a Western background. And his point of argument was, how do you know that what is there in the book that you show now was what was spoken 5,000 years ago? Of course, we know that Guru Parampara and they keep it as it is. But how to explain to a person like this? His argument for being an atheist is that the religious books are all interpreted over a period of time, and we are not at this point sure that what was original and what was added.
Yes. Nice. This is such a nice point of discussion. The argument that you're mentioning, which is religion should not be true because, or is most likely not true because these books have been changed and we don't know if they're the original, same as what is 5,000 years ago, and therefore it's not true. This argument is a very false argument. It's such a false argument that religion has been interpreted, the books have been interpreted, therefore they cannot be true. Well, then you need to ask this person that, well then what is true? Science also has been interpreted in so many different ways over the course of so many years and centuries. They've interpreted in different ways. And science has changed. Newton said certain things which Einstein has rejected, and he proved that they were wrong. Things that Newton had established through his theory of relativity, Einstein showed that Newton's classical physics is actually wrong. It's incorrect. And so therefore, because it was interpreted, is science wrong? Well, if I put my food into the microwave, then my food gets hot. If you put your food into the microwave, it also gets hot. So just because it's been interpreted or changed or modified doesn't mean that science is false. Still we see it is true, right? So in the case of religion, how logical, how reasonable is it to reject religion just because, even accepting his idea that it's been changed, just because it's changed. Let's say that a few words in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam have been changed. Even accepting that idea, how reasonable is it to say that it's not true because it's been changed? So let's forget the history, right? Forget the past, forget the the development of it. First, see what it is saying. What the Gita is writing, is that true or not? Does that make sense or not? Is it logical or not? Or is it illogical? If it is logical, then what does it matter what source it comes from? And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually argued exactly along these same lines. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living in India in the colonial period. And at that time, the British, they were dismissing the Vedas. And one way they were dismissing the Vedas is by saying that actually they're not so old. The Hindus, they say they're 5,000 years old, but actually the Bible is older. The Vedas were just written 200 years ago. So we find in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings that he accepts that. He says, okay, yes, this Bhagavatam, it was just written 400 years ago, or whatever, I don't remember the exact timing that he gives them. So let us accept that, he says. It was written 400 years ago. Now, let's see what the philosophy is inside it. And he says, let's take the philosophy of the Bhagavatam and compare it with Christian theology. And let us see which theology is more deep, which is teaching a deeper philosophy. So this argument is many times given the source, the Vedas were changed, they're so old, there's no continuity to it, so therefore they're false. And it's honestly a very false argument, very flawed. Just because everything changes in this world, but ultimately the merit of something is in its philosophy. Does it work or not? Science is powerful because it works. Because science works, therefore it's powerful. In the same way, if you want to know if these books are true or not, then practice them. If you practice them, and not just practice, but also the reasoning, the logic, the philosophy that they give, if that makes sense to you, if it's the most sensible philosophy, then it should be true. And secondly, last point, very quickly, that in terms of practice, we forget that the basis of religion is religious experience. That when people practice it and it works for them, then that is the ultimate proof. And Prabhupada said this on many times. He says, okay, if Krishna consciousness is false, then you give it up. But you first at least try. Do the experiment. Do the experiment for 6 months. If it works, then you practice it. So our basis also, one of the bases, the three things I mentioned, revelation, reason, and experience, our basis is also experience. If you practice Krishna consciousness, you will experience something very nice. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, and we wish if you could do your science seminar. You said it's a week seminar. Maybe we can stagger it over 7 weeks or maybe 2-3 months. If you could come once in 2 weeks or even once a month and do this session, we and our second generation devotees will be very benefited. Thank you so much for your association.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for this wonderful association. Actually, I enjoyed this more than I think all of you did. I feel more grateful and enlivened. Thank you, Nayana Miran Prabhu and Mataji, for engaging me in this service.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'm going to go ahead.
No, you go. It's okay.
Yeah, I just needed a couple of points of clarification. By the way, Saraputra Prabhu, he's Richard Thompson. Anyway, one thing I wanted to understand better was, in answer to this last question about, the changing or reinterpreting of the Shastra, how do we know that it's still valid? And so I just want to be clear that what you're saying is that the important thing is whether by following the words that we have presently, do we become devotees? By following, are we getting the desired result? So, like, who cares what how the words have been changed if by following the words that we have now, we're getting the proper result? Is that the idea, or am I not understanding?
Slightly. The point is that, yes, the scriptures have their power because they are coming from Krishna and because they have been unchanged. We do have the original scriptures. So we fully accept that fact that, perfect knowledge should be perfectly revealed. It should have a perfect source. But the point I was making was in response to this challenge that people make. That, well, because the scriptures, there is actually some linguistic evidence, academically speaking, that they've been changed. There's critical additions, changed in the sense that over the course of time, some words get lost or, they get replaced with other words. Like, for example, the Mahabharata, we don't have an original version of the Mahabharata. Even Prabhupada said this. We don't actually have, like, the Mahabharata that Vyasadeva wrote. And so we have retellings of it. And so some stories are different, some are the same, and you don't know which one's correct, which one's not. So my point is that the fact that something is changed is not the basis to reject something. That the argument that, because it's changed, therefore it's false, is a wrong argument. Because science also is changes. Right? Science has gone through so many changes. But we see that it is true in terms of material things. And we don't reject it because it's changed. So the ultimate test of something is the message itself, is the philosophy itself, right? The ultimate test of something is how logical it is, how impactful it is, the impact that it has on a person, and how beautiful it is. So those are the basis by which we have to judge something, not simply by its age or its origin. Redwood trees are also thousands of years old. That doesn't mean that redwood trees are more important than the Vedas. Things that are old are nice, but the age of the Vedas are not its main testimony. And this is something that Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other acharyas also pointed out, that ultimately you know the tree by its fruit, and so judge it first by its fruit. That's the basic idea.
Okay, I think I understood you just now. I'm not sure how it's different from what I was saying. So
yes, no,
I feel like
but the only point I want to make is that the source and the authenticity of the Vedas are important for us. In other words, it's not also that we say that, well, we don't really care about that or that's not important. That is important, because we say that this is written by Vyasa, it's divinely revealed, therefore it is perfect. That is important. It's just that as an argument, as a challenge against it, it's a weak challenge. So that was the distinction I was making.
Yeah, and the reason why the source is, if you're getting the proper result, the reason that the source is so important is because what?
Because if the source is not good, we won't get the proper result. So the proper result is the testimony of the source, meaning that, and also the proper source is something that encourages us to take it seriously. So, for example, if I say something like I write down my book, and I say that this is a scripture, but I'm full of vices and my character is not good, then you won't take my book seriously to even read it. So that's the idea, that the Vedas are taken very seriously because they have such a good source. But ultimately, it's a matter of faith. I never met Vyasadeva. You never met Vyasadeva. He was an old sage somewhere, so maybe this is all story tales. So how do we know? How can we actually argue that it is true? Ultimately, it's by the message and the experience, the message, and the whole picture. That like I was saying, we have like 5 worldviews to choose from. That ultimately truth is or choice is relative. So we have this, and this, and then faith is oftentimes indicative. There's many indications that lead us to have faith in something. So all of these indications, okay, it makes sense, but it's also revealed, and also the source is God, and also it matches my own experience. All of these things, they are matching, so it must be true. So it's not, the point, I guess, the message that I'm getting across is that it's not just one or the other. All of those things come together, and therefore our faith is established.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wonder if it's too much for you to list those 5 worldviews, if you meant that literally.
No, I don't exactly mean that literally, but basically we can think about it like there's Krishna consciousness, then there's Buddhism, which is sort of a form of Shunyavad, nihilism. Then you have impersonalism, and then you have atheism. So you have atheism, impersonalism, nihilism, and then theism. And then within theism, you have Krishna consciousness and other forms of theism. And one actually can go through these. It's very nihilism. And even Buddhists themselves say that it doesn't make sense. They say, but it's beyond words. It's beyond words. Now, how can everything be nothing? It doesn't make sense. Then impersonalism, everything is one. It might be true, but it's so boring. It also doesn't make sense. And then atheism. The problem with atheism is that, well, it could be true. Actually, what the atheists are saying, it could be true that just like God has no source, the universe has no source. Just as God is beginningless, the universe is beginningless. That could also be true. But also, it's so depressing. We basically turn into mulch, and then we die. There's no future. It does not resonate with one's heart. Why do we search for eternality if we're not eternal? A table or chair is perfectly happy to mulch, but we are not. So it appears that we're something different than mulch. And then the last option is theism. And theism, there's such little knowledge in other traditions, and the Bhagavatam just gives us so much. It just like it's an ocean compared to small wells. And so within theism, it was just like the Bhagavatam, and Krishna consciousness is an obvious choice. So yes, so that's those are some basic worldviews.
Thank you, Prabhu. And also, I wasn't clear on why, if one studies various religions, you can come out an atheist.
Yes, no, exactly for this reason, the question that the previous question Mataji had asked, that when they read the different religions, they start to realize that, actually the Bible was most likely not revealed, and it was just written by a group of human beings, the disciples of Christ. Actually it's possible that Christ even never lived. He's a made-up figure, and his birth coincides with a astronomical occurrence. And so all of this was actually historically made up. And then they study Hinduism, and they say, well, actually the Bhagavatam is only 800 years old. And, there were a lot of poets at that time, and it's just good poetry, because there's other poetry just like it. So maybe it's not actually revealed. And then, they study the arguments of Buddhism. It doesn't make sense to them. They study the arguments of impersonalism. It doesn't make sense to them. Then so many doctrines in Christianity don't make sense. Even if you accept God, they don't make sense for example, the idea of eternal hell. If God is all loving, all good, all kind, why would he allow for eternal hell? So because these philosophies are actually dissatisfying, they actually don't completely satisfy the self. The same experience that Vyasadeva had, right? None of his Vedic philosophy satisfied itself, right? They study the Vedas and they find like these pages and pages of rituals where you're supposed to, cut the goat, this way, cut him this way, and then do it like this, and then chant this, and they just think this is just, insane. And so Vyasadeva also, it doesn't satisfy the self, then they lose their faith in God. And so therefore Prabhupada actually said that this Bhagavatam, it will create a revolution in the society, because this is Krishna appearing in the form of Bhagavatam. He's the son of Kali Yuga. Because until they come to this philosophy, religion is actually dissatisfying. And so therefore most of them end up atheists. They when they actually seriously think about religion, they find it dissatisfying, and so they give it up. And that's why this is the gradual path to that end.
So the difference, therefore, between studying Bhagavatam and studying other religions is what? That there's a practical process by which one can see the results, whereas the others don't have that? Or why is there a difference?
Yes, it's not. It's like Hindu children, for example, in India, they see their parents doing so many rituals, but for them it's meaningless rituals. Right? There's no in-depth philosophy. The Bhagavatam is giving in-depth philosophy, a very profound philosophy, and again, it's a very long discussion, so it's kind of hard. But in every aspect, in terms of its understanding of the world, nature, the self, it's very satisfying. So it does require a leap of faith, but when you do make that leap of faith, it has a very satisfying and complete and logical worldview to give to you. Whereas, for example, just to pick on Christianity, if you take the leap of faith and you're a Christian, you still don't have a satisfying philosophy, even after you made that leap of faith. You cannot understand why a loving God will condemn people to hell for eternity. There's no answer as to why children are born blind. Why am I suffering and the other person next to me is not? Because there's no idea of karma or reincarnation. Right? And then when you're ready to love God, and you're saying, okay, so the goal of life is to love and serve God, then you don't know how God looks. How does his face look? Why is he an old man? And what is heaven like? There's no description of heaven. So once you even make the leap of faith, it's not satisfying.
Okay. One really last thing, I hope it's quick.
Prabhuji, Krishna, as you have time, is it late for you? Is it okay?
No, I'm actually on my spring break, so I'm completely fine. All of you are probably going to work, so anyone who needs to go to work can
Okay, as long as you're fine, it's okay, Prabhu. I just want to know. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just the last thing. It was briefly mentioned that there was some payments involved when it came to Darwin proposing his, theories, and some dishonesty or something there, which I had never heard of before. So I was just wondering about that.
Darwin actually, there's a lot of different biographies about him, and but one thing is clear is that Darwin did not become an atheist as a result of his evolutionary theory. Darwin became an atheist because he could not find an answer to the problem of evil. He grew up in a Christian family. He had a very devout Christian wife. He had devout Christian parents, and he was very much in touch with Christianity. And it's actually a historical fact, it's written in his biographies, that he could not accept the Christian response to the problem of suffering. He could not understand why God would allow so much suffering in this world if he's so kind and loving. And therefore he lost his faith in his religion, and then he tried to find an alternative, or rather, while finding an alternative, he found his theory of evolution. But he knew that his theory had a lot of shortcomings. He himself writes that in his writings, that how this is, all these things are shortcomings in his theory, and but he proposed it because he was disillusioned with religion, not because he really thought that his evolutionary theory was anything really fantastic. You know, it wasn't that he thought, oh, this theory is amazing, so therefore God doesn't exist. But rather it was the other way around. So he thought God doesn't exist, and so he then tried to find some theory to make sense of the world.
So even he was dissatisfied with his own proposal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But there is also, like I said, there's mention of his being paid to come up with this. Is that true?
No. He was paid to go on his voyage. So his theory started when he was on the Beagle and he went on this voyage. So both things are true. He was paid, but not exactly paid to come up with a theory. He was paid to observe the world. That's all. I mean, that's all he had to do. He was getting paid to observe. He was an observer on the ship, and so that's why he was paid.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Prabhu, for all of your very wonderful explanation.
Thank you, ma'am. So I think Tiffany Mataji had one question, and with that last question, we can wrap up. Tiffany Mataji, do you want to go ahead? Tiffany? Okay, I think she's not there. Okay, thank you so much, Prabhuji, and thank you for your patience, and thanks to all the devotees for such a lively discussion. It was really wonderful. All your questions were wonderful, and the answers were so perfect. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your valuable time and association. We look forward to hearing from you again and again. Thank you so much. Thanks to Padma Sakhi Mataji as well for arranging this. We can end the call, please.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavavrinda Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Gopal Hari Prabhuji ki jai. Thank you, Prabhu.